Welcome to today's Rotary Club presentation. My name is Liza Leonard. I am the president-elect for the Idaho Falls Rotary Club, today filling in for our new club president, Michelle Holt. Thank you for joining us. Please note that today's program is being posted on Facebook, but is also available for viewing on IE Productions' YouTube channel. Please feel free to share this program online with others that may be interested in this content. We just want to thank IE Productions for again hosting us in their fantastic studio and allowing us to social distance while still providing program to our members. Just to begin the program, I'd like to inform you a little bit about the Rotary Club and who we are. The Rotary Club is an international service club, and our motto is service above self. We have 1.2 million members worldwide across 35,000 clubs. Around the globe, Rotary provides around 16 million volunteer hours each year. We have helped provide polio immunizations for over 2.5 billion children worldwide. Rotary causes include promoting peace, fighting disease, providing clean water, saving mothers and children, supporting education, and growing local economies. Locally, our Idaho Falls Club is known for some of the service we provide in our community, including the Idaho Falls Duck Race, benefiting the Idaho Falls Riverwalk Greenbelt Trail, which is an attraction for visitors and also a gem for locals to enjoy. Our club also provides annual scholarships, youth programs, we host international exchange students, and provide services across the community in a variety of ways. While we are a membership-based club, we welcome guests and are always looking to grow our membership ranks. Just to take care of a little bit of club business, we conducted a member survey, which many of you responded to, and we have decided to continue postponing any meetings that we would have in person, at least through the end of August, and we will closely monitor updates from health officials on how we might gather again. We also have canceled our annual summer picnic with the idea that we perhaps will postpone the event for when it is safe for us to gather again, or even donate those funds to a nonprofit. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our program chair for the month of July, Damon Watkins.
Good afternoon. Having played a part in Nate Eaton's return to Idaho Falls to create East Idaho News, I have seen firsthand his unique ability to create something from nothing, establish a common thread, and tell a story. Nate Eaton has wanted to be a reporter since he was a child. He grew up watching the news every night, pretended to be a weatherman in the garage, and made videos with his friends using a borrowed camcorder. After graduating from BYU, Idaho, he started his journalism career at KIDK here in Idaho Falls. 3 years and dozens of snowstorms later, he packed up his 2002 Honda Civic and drove across country to begin work at WRIC in Richmond, Virginia. While there, Nate covered the execution of the DC sniper, the aftermath of the Virginia Tech shooting, the brutal murder of a beloved UVA lacrosse player, undercover prostitution and drug stings, and countless of other high-profile stories. He's interviewed a serial killer, many presidential candidates, high-profile celebrities, world athletes, award-winning authors, and talented musicians. He covered half a dozen visits of President Obama and attended the White House Easter egg roll. Nate has reported in every weather condition from hurricane to tornado, floods, a large earthquake, and blizzard. He once used a Kit Kat bar to measure snowfall amounts, and the segments went viral. Over the years, Nate has received dozens of awards, including a National Edward R. Murrow Award for a story he produced on a baby born at 24 weeks gestation. He's received 11 regional Murrow Awards, and the Virginia Associated Press named him the Outstanding Reporter of the Year 4 times. He's a proud member of the Idaho Press Club and RTDNA. In 2015, Nate moved back to Idaho Falls and helped launch EastIdahoNews.com. The website quickly became Eastern Idaho's leader for news and has been honored with dozens of awards. Nate has appeared on every national news network, and his work has featured on Dateline NBC, Dr. Oz, Dr. Phil, Today, Good Morning America, and other shows. Nate's greatest accomplishment, however, was to convince his wife to say yes. He's madly in love with Erica, and together they have 3 children, Emerson, Everett, and Elliot. He's the recipient of the Distinguished Under 40. He's been nominated for even an Emmy several times. He's won a number of regional Murrows and won national Murrow recognition. Nate's won other awards from the Society of Professional Journalists to the Idaho Press Club. If news is being created from the most rural places in Idaho or the concrete jungle of New York City, Nate Eaton is on the ground telling stories to an audience, our audience, right here in our community. I have spent most of my life in Southeast Idaho, receiving my local news from traditional outlets. That is, until Nate Eaton has created a new model of local news distribution. It is my distinct privilege to present to Rotary my friend, Nate Eaton from East Idaho News.
Thank you, Damon. You're very kind, and thank you to the Rotary Club for having me today, and to IE Productions. I know a little bit about producing shows and programs, so I appreciate the hard work that IE puts into this. July is a special month for EastIdahoNews.com. We turned 5 this month. We officially launched on July 1st, 2015, and it's funny because looking back, we didn't really have much of a plan or a strategy or, a 10-year goal. We're going to be here by this date. We just wanted to do local news, and that has been our goal and our daily mission every day since then. And because we're turning 5 this month, I decided to share 5 things I have learned over the past 5 years here at EastIdahoNews.com. And when I say I speak collectively as a staff. We have an incredibly hardworking staff. We're small, we are lean, but we try to do the best we can in covering local news and local events. So here are the top, well, not the top 5 things, but 5 things I've learned over the past 5 years. First one is that sometimes the best things don't turn out the way you expect, and that's okay. I always dreamed of being a TV news reporter. I wanted to start in a small city like Idaho Falls, move to a middle-sized city, and then end up in a big city or at a national news network. And I was on that path. As Damon mentioned, I started my career here and then moved to Virginia, where I worked for the ABC station. And I had offers at big cities. One was a top 10 market, which would have been in a very large city. I thought a lot about it and talked with my wife, and we were ready to make a career change and make a move when East Idaho News came along. And I didn't want to come back to Idaho. My wife definitely did not want to move to Idaho. She was from the East Coast. We liked being in a bigger city. But we had 2 years to think about this possibility of what it could become. And I remember walking into my news director's office in Virginia. They had offered me a new contract to stay. And I said, I'm not going to take the contract. I'm leaving and I'm moving to Idaho. And she said, where's Iowa? And I said, no, Idaho. And she didn't know where it was. She had to pull out a map. And I can't tell you how many people said, you're doing what? To do what? You're leaving TV? People don't leave TV generally on their own. They're either fired or they retire. And once you leave television, it's very hard to get back in. But it felt like this was something to do, come out here and do this little community news website. We launched, as I said, July 1st, 2015. We had 5,601 page views, and we were thrilled to get over 5,000 page views on that first day. The first month, we had around 1 million page views. Well, things quickly changed, and we rapidly grew. And over the past year, our work has been featured all over the world. Last month, we broke a record for the most traffic we've had on a single day. 1.3 million page views on one day. That beat out our entire first month 5 years ago. I think we've hit over 280 million page views with 90 million users from around the world. And it's been something that I didn't expect would happen, but it's turned out to be pretty good. So that's the first lesson. Sometimes the best things don't turn out the way you expect, and that's okay. Lesson number 2, a focus on everything is a focus on nothing. When we were preparing to launch East Idaho News, we wanted to do everything. Local sports, local politics, have editorials, have movie times for the local theaters, have restaurant menus, be the community source for everything. This would take a ton of work for a very small staff, but we were determined. We were able to get a meeting with Clark Gilbert, who at the time was president of BYU Idaho, and before that job, he had transformed Deseret Digital in Salt Lake City and KSL.com into the powerhouse that they are. KSL.com is the most visited local news site in America. We sat down to meet with him. We explained our goals, what we wanted to do. And I remember he said, I wrote it down, the internet rewards specialization. And in the internet age, if you're not the best at something, you're one click away from someone who is. He said you need to focus on 1 or 2 things, maybe 3 tops. Otherwise, a focus on everything is a focus on nothing. So we decided our focus would be breaking news and in-depth features. And whether those features were investigations or feel-good stories, whatever they were, we wanted to own breaking news and in-depth features. We'll cover other things. We do cover politics. We cover a few local sports stories and some of the other things that the other media excel at. But right now, our focus is breaking news and in-depth features. And so the advice that I took to heart that day, which I would share, is a focus on everything is a focus on nothing. Lesson number 3 that we've learned, sharing is okay. When we first launched, we had this unusual idea that just didn't make sense to traditional media, that we would share our content with anyone that wants it, as long as they give us credit and link back to our website. Now, the traditional media rules are, it's yours, you don't share unless you have some sort of affiliate agreement or you're part of the AP or something like that. But our idea was that the more eyeballs that can see your story, can see your work, the better. We want everyone to see our work. That's why we're not behind a paywall. We want people to read and share our stories and talk about them. We went to the local news agencies and explained our plan. We went to news agencies outside of Eastern Idaho and said, listen, we're going to launch this news website. If you want to share content with us, you're welcome to. We're happy to share. The truth is, everybody knows, everybody's heard that the news industry is suffering right now, especially local news. There's layoffs, there's shutdowns, there's furloughs. It seems like every day a different newspaper somewhere in the country is closing its doors. And I believe that by sharing your content, it can help all newsrooms across the country. Our goal is not to put any other news organization out of business. In fact, we would love if 5 other news agencies sprouted up here in Eastern Idaho. We'd love to have someone that specializes in politics and is at every city council meeting. We'd love to have a special reporter on environmental issues, outdoors issues. It would be great if there were more newsrooms. And we believe that by sharing content with each other, you can help each other. We have partnerships and share agreements with KSL.com, the Idaho Statesman, KIVI-TV in Boise, Idaho Education News, Gephardt Daily, which is a news website in Salt Lake, Star Valley Independent, and KPVI-TV. We're also one of 1,100 newsrooms in the world that are CNN affiliates. And I know probably half of you heard CNN and immediately were upset. Let me explain how that works. When we launched, no national outlet would partner with us, because we're not a TV station, we're not a radio station, and we're not a newspaper. And at the time, to just have a little news outlet, you had to be hooked to a traditional outlet. The only one that would consider providing us national news was CNN. CNN has affiliates all over the world. Most TV stations in the country are CNN affiliates. That means if there's a local station in North Dakota that covers a story, CNN can ask for that story. They can share it with CNN. And here in Idaho Falls, as a CNN affiliate, we can take their story. Now, you can argue all you want about CNN politics and whether they're right, left. I'm not going to get into that. But CNN has been beneficial to us at providing us with some of the affiliate stories and even some national stories that have helped us. Interestingly enough, here we are 5 years later, and now AP, other news outlets want to partner with us, and we're exploring some of those options. So I would say that maybe not for every business, but at least for ours, sharing our content has been helpful, and we have been able to see our work go viral in many ways. The fourth lesson that I've learned is the importance of engaging with your audience. We have one of the most interactive Facebook pages in Eastern Idaho, and I think one of the reasons for that is that we engage with our audience. I personally try not to read the comments or get involved in the comments, but Nate Sunderland, our managing editor, is excellent at interacting with our audience and sometimes calming people down when they need to be calmed down, or sometimes giving a little bit more context to what the story might be, encouraging people to read beyond the headline of what's on their Facebook feed. We are to the point now where our organization needs a full-time comment moderator, because the amount of comments we get daily is in the hundreds, sometimes thousands, between Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and emails that we get. It's interesting to me that people will often call our newsroom from all over the country just to share their opinions. They don't want to, have us do a story on them. But just yesterday, a woman from Maine called and wanted to speak to me about a story that I had recently covered and just share her thoughts. People want to be heard. And by engaging with your audience, you are able to somehow let them know that their opinion is important. Even if it doesn't end up on a local story, they were able to leave their comment and share their thoughts. One other lesson as far as tying into engaging with our audience, it's okay to admit when you're wrong. That also is kind of a no-no in traditional media. A lot of media organizations will issue a clarification, or they'll change something quickly on their website even though they know that it, was wrong. And we've learned that if we're wrong, we need to admit we're wrong. In fact, I misspoke 2 or 3 weeks ago on a national radio show, and I made a pretty big mistake. I was caught up in the heat of the moment. It was live, and what I said when I misspoke ended up, Fox News wrote an entire story about what I said that was wrong. I was on vacation with my family in Island Park. My phone starts blowing up. And so I went to my Facebook page and I wrote that I was wrong. The amount of comments of people saying, it's okay, we understand you're human, thank you for acknowledging your wrongness, blew me away. I then reached out to the producer of the radio show, or the host actually, and she said, I'll work with my producers, we'll change it. Fox News quickly corrected it. It ended up not really being a big deal. But the fact that the media can admit they're wrong, I think this day and age, it's refreshing to people. So if we're ever wrong, please contact us. Or if you think we're wrong, let us know. Call us. We'll listen to you. We'll hear you out. We are not perfect. And we don't say that we're perfect. We want to be sure we get it right, and we want to be sure that we engage with our audience. People want to be heard, and that leads to the final point that I've learned over the past 5 years. Everybody has a story. When I worked at KIDK, we had a reporter named Tommy Noel who would open the phone book once a week and point his finger at somebody's name and then call them and say, hey, I want to do a story on you. And 9 times out of 10, people would say, I don't have anything newsworthy. And he'd go over to their house and he would interview them. And sure enough, those are some of the most memorable stories. Some of the best stories I've told over the years have come from everyday people that I just meet on the street, or they come up to me and tell me something about their sister or their brother or their neighbor. And those are the stories that I'll remember. I've been able to interview a few famous people, and while it is really cool to talk to Garth Brooks and others, the stories that I think I'll remember most are those everyday story type things that I get to cover. I remember, I'll never forget this. I walked into our newsroom several years ago when I was working in Virginia, and they said, can you go down to a salon? They're honoring women who have been victims of domestic violence, and they're giving them makeovers. And can you turn that for your story? And I'm thinking, I'd rather do something a little bit bigger than, women getting makeovers, but whatever, I'll go down. And that was my assignment. And so I went down with my photographer, and we walked in there and they said, we want to introduce you to this woman named Star Austin, but can you please not shoot the left side of her face? And we thought, okay, that's fine. She had hair over the one side of her face. And she sat down and I said, can I interview you while you're getting your makeover or getting your hair done? And she said, sure. So I proceeded to say, so tell us your story. You know, why are you here? What happened? And she said that 2 years earlier, I believe it was 2 years, she was in her house with her 3 kids, holding her baby daughter, when her husband shot her in the head. He had abused her for years. The anger escalated that night. She was holding the baby. He pulled the trigger, put the gun to her head, and pulled the trigger. She collapsed to the ground. He took off running. The baby is sitting there crying. The other children witnessed this and called 911. And the paramedics arrived, and she survived. I mean, it was crazy what she then proceeded to tell me, that bullet fragments were still stuck in her jaw, and she had a constant ringing in her ears, and she, had horrible headaches. And her husband he ended up in prison on a life sentence. And here she is telling me this phenomenal story, and I'm blown away by this woman who survived this. And then she said, I went back and watched the story this morning. She said, I don't hold any animosity toward my husband. I've forgiven him. I look to my God and I thank him because I honestly feel that he's put certain things in front of me to tell me I need to move forward. And here she was on the news telling this story. And I don't know how many people saw that story, how many people were impacted by it. A normal, everyday housewife who survives a horrible ordeal and is able to speak out to other domestic violence victims who hopefully then seek out help. Star's story may be one of the most important I ever tell, and she's just an average, everyday person. So everybody has a story. Regardless of who you think you are or what you think you've done, I can guarantee that if we sat down for 5 or 10 minutes, we could find something to report on. Those are the 5 lessons I've learned over the past 5 years. I've learned a lot more. And some I've learned pretty painfully, and some I've learned pretty happily, I guess you could say. Sometimes the best things don't turn out the way you expect, and that's okay. A focus on everything is a focus on nothing. Sharing is okay. Engage with your audience, and everyone has a story. I do want to close by thanking you for helping us succeed. We wouldn't be here without you. And local news, I talked about it. It's a hard game right now. Advertising dollars are running short. So if you have a budget, support local news agencies. I don't care if it's us. I don't care if it's the newspaper or the TV station or radio, whoever it is. If you can, support us, because communities suffer when local news goes away. We've been able to expose some good, some bad, some questionable activity, I believe, over the past 5 years, and we'll continue to do so with your support and your help. Download our app. It's free. Stay informed. Check out the website. Like the news agencies on Facebook if you're on social media. Follow on YouTube. Do whatever you can to support the local agencies so that we can guarantee that in 5 years I can be back talking about our 10-year anniversary, our 15-year anniversary, and maybe one day our 50-year anniversary. So thank you for having me. I do have a list of questions here that I'd like to answer and get through as many as I have. Am I okay on time? Okay, they say yes from the dark shadows of this room. Question number 1. How do you reconcile reporting on tragic or bad news that also drives the success of East Idaho News? That's a good question. It is very true that whenever it is a hard story, a tragic story, a bad news story, more people read it. Everybody says they wish there was only good news out there, only good news sources. And I would say that I kind of do too. But statistically, more people read the bad news than the good news. I think it's important to put things into context as far as when you're reporting on the tragic or the bad news, to try to reach out to those people that are affected by it and understand that if they don't want to talk, they don't have to talk. We're not going to harass them or bug them for a comment. I also think it is important to not ignore the bad things in the community. Several years ago, somebody called furious that we were covering so many sex abuse crimes. Quit covering this. You're only giving it the exposure it needs. My argument is, heaven forbid we get to the day where it's no longer newsworthy that sex offenders are committing crimes, that it becomes as common as a car crash, and we don't cover those stories. I think by shining a light on the bad news, it can help the community become educated on what is happening. You know, a lot of people say, you're only after ratings. Well, we don't really do ratings on the internet, but we do track our analytics. And if we were only about getting clicks, getting visitors, we would only do mugshots and car crashes, or we would do fake news, because you can get a lot more people clicking on stories that aren't real than real stories. Number 2, East Idaho News does a lot of social media posting. Who manages the social media and who responds to commenters? Do you ever delete comments? Do you think that those in the comments are representative of your market and audience? Nate Sunderland is our moderator. We rarely delete comments, but if there is profanity or vulgarity or disgusting memes or racial type things, we will delete the comment. And sometimes, though, we don't get to it. As I said, it is a full-time job. He has a million other things to do, and this is just one portion of his job. I don't necessarily think the comments are representative of our audience, because we could have a typical Facebook post that reaches 50 or 60,000 people, but there's only 100 comments. The rest of those people that see it don't comment. And a lot of times people that might have an opposing view to what the story is or what the commenters are saying don't comment because they don't want to engage in a battle. I don't think that I have ever left a comment on a social media website anywhere that I can recall. And I think there's a lot of people like me that say, I don't want to get engaged. But it's something we're seriously discussing right now. How do we go forward with commenting? You know, your one idea is to just shut them all down. Turn off the comments, quit posting on Facebook. I don't think that really solves the problem. The other idea is, where does free speech lie in as far as people being able to voice their opinion? So it's a tricky thing that we're always evaluating, and I think in the next few days or weeks, we'll have out some clear guidelines as far as commenting. Number 3, how do you handle uncooperative interviewees? Well, I guess that depends. You know, what makes really good video is when you ambush somebody with a microphone and a camera. That should, I believe, always kind of be a last resort when it comes to news. I was in Hawaii earlier this year, and Chad and Lori Daybell were pulled over and served a search warrant, and then did not have a vehicle to leave the hotel. And that was a situation where I knew that may be the only time I get to speak to them. And I had a lot of questions, and I wanted to see if they would answer them. I guess you could say they were uncooperative interviewees because they didn't say anything to me. Well, I think she said one thing of that's great when I said that people were praying for them. But other than that, they didn't say anything. But for 3 minutes, I followed them with a camera and a microphone, and then they ducked into a hotel, and we didn't see them again. I think that interview, if you want to call it that, may be more telling than had they sat and talked with me, which, again, I was hoping they would do. And had they said, hold on, put away the camera, we'll talk with you, let me go get set up or sit down somewhere, we wouldn't have aired that original part. We would have actually done the interview. So there's a few different things as far as uncooperative interviewees. I think you have to be fair to as many people, to everybody that you talk to. And then if they don't want to cooperate with you and it's newsworthy, you can say that they refuse to cooperate. When is it acceptable to grant anonymous, to be anonymous as a source? We get a lot of people that call up and are anonymous and say they want to be anonymous. We'll listen to what they say. And if their story checks out and it's strong enough, we might change their name. If somebody is in a horrible abuse situation and they want to tell their story and we feel that their story is powerful enough and it checks out, we will allow them to be anonymous. We verify everything that comes in to the best of our ability. Believe me, a lot of weird stuff comes in that isn't true. But when someone calls up and says, I know a lot of information, please don't use my name, sometimes it can take weeks, months, years for them to feel comfortable enough to go on the record. On the record, meaning sit down in front of a camera or let us use their name. That's always the preference. But if they want to be anonymous and it's important enough to tell their story, we can generally work around that. Do you think the general public trusts the media? I think the general public trusts local media more than national media. I personally can't watch any of the cable news networks anymore because they're all telling a different story. But I think it's important to check with multiple sources when it comes to a national story, even a local story, see how the different outlets cover different things. Surveys show I don't think the public trusts the national media a lot, but I hope that as a local outlet, they can say that they trust us. If not, let us know. Let us know. Tell us about your journalistic ethics. A lot of people say journalists have no ethics. They just go with whatever. I would argue that other than attorneys and people in the legal profession, we probably discuss ethics more than any other industry. Maybe the medical industry, they have a lot of discussion about ethics. But we have long discussions a lot on, reporting on a sex crime. How graphic do you get? How detailed do you get? Does including the victim's ages help? Does it hurt? We have long discussions about ethics. We actually have our ethics code on our website at eastidahonews.com. If you go to the very bottom, it says Code of Ethics, and that talks about how we cover suicides, how we cover interviews with children, how we cover anonymous sources, photos, videos, how we source things. That probably explains it better than I could here, but it is something that we discuss every day. And we've been in some strong ethical debates, stuff that we are given, especially with the Daybell case, that would make really big headlines, that would be accurate, but ethically, is it right to put it out there? And we just talk about it every day. What have been the top stories in eastern Idaho outside of the Daybell case in recent years? Until the Daybell case, our number one performing story, as far as views and being shared, was several years ago when a tourist put a bison in the back of their car in Yellowstone National Park. I was in Salt Lake City. That was on a Saturday when we were notified of that. I got a text from Brad Barlow. Many of you know Brad Barlow, and he had a picture of, I think his cousin took the picture of the bison in the car. And I'm like, there's no way that is real. But I called her. I called the cousin, and she said, yeah, it's real. And she agreed to talk with me. And then we called Yellowstone National Park, and they confirmed that it happened. And we posted that story, and it blew up. And that was a Saturday. By Monday morning, it was everywhere. So that was a popular story. Some of the craziest stories that go big are some vague ones. I think last year we had one about sleep, like why you need your sleep or something, and that blew up. Some blogger picked it up and took it. The disappearance of Dior Coons has also been a story that people around the world have followed. Often EastIdahoNews.com reports as news is developing. How do you ensure the information being published is accurate? How often have you had to retract a piece? Well, we go to once we get tips about something happening right now, we immediately will say, do you have photos? Or can you send us something? And then we'll call the agency, whoever is responding. There was a house fire yesterday in Idaho Falls. We started getting several Facebook messages and then photos of the house fire. And then we're able to listen to the scanner, and we heard that the crews were responding. And then we sent a reporter to the scene. And once we have eyes on it, we'll go with it as long as somebody's witnessing it. Or if there's enough witnesses that we can, collaborate the story and then check with sources, we'll go with it there. We do not go just based off of the scanner. We don't report on scanner traffic. We confirm everything that we hear on the scanner or work to not confirm it. And I would say probably 60 to 70% what you hear on the scanner ends up not being a story. And that's just, I think, good journalistic practices. We have never had to retract a piece. We have had to put up corrections and clarifications, but we have never had to take down a story completely. East Idaho News, like most local news organization, reports on crimes committed and those suspected or allegedly involved in a crime. In other places, people have sued journalists and news organizations for stories published online that stay in the cyber world. What do you think the role is of journalists to follow up on these stories with the result of a case or charges? That's a great question, and there are news outlets all across the country recently that are saying, we're going to post mugshots, but we're only going to keep them up for a year or two, and then we'll remove them. or we won't even post mugshots at all. We have a policy that if we're going to report on a story and use somebody's name, we have an obligation to follow it through to the end. And whether that's a jury trial, whether that's a plea agreement, whether charges are dropped, we will follow it through to the end. Some slip through the cracks, and if they do, we want to be notified of it and follow up. If we decide that it's a story not worth following up through to the end, but it's still interesting, news-wise, we'll put up the story and then we will not use the person's name and or mugshot. And because we don't identify them, we then necessarily won't follow the case through to the end. So I believe that if you report it, if it's on the evening news or on a website or in the paper, that you should follow it through to the end, regardless of what the outcome is. And that's what we try to do and we strive to do. Otherwise, we don't want to originally report it in the beginning. Number 10, what advice would you give to anyone hoping to get into journalism today? Well, you've got to be nimble and work quick and think outside the box. When I started in this 15 years ago, I couldn't wait to get to a big market so I could have a cameraman and an editor, and all I would do is write the script and go on TV. That has changed so much. Now news directors are looking for people that can do it all, that aren't afraid to shoot video on their phone, go live on Facebook, write the story, go on the evening news with it, and then post it to the website, and then move on to something else. Our reporters probably turn 2 to 3 stories a day, and that's normal. Whereas, 15 years ago, you might do 1 story a day. And you have to work fast. You have to be willing to listen to people and hear other people out. And I think you have to be willing to work holidays and weekends and crazy hours, mornings, nights. And the most important thing is you have to be curious. You have to be curious. If you're not curious about other people, about things happening in the world, then this is a job that you can easily burn out on. Well, there you go. That's it for me. Thank you for listening, and thank you for having me today. Liza, back to you.
Well, thank you so much, Nate Eaton. We really appreciate hearing from you. Thank you also to our program chair, Damon Watkins. We'll be bringing more programs this month to you. Next week, we will have the opportunity to hear from Judge Ryan Nelson, who was recently confirmed as a judge on the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. As a lifelong resident of our community, Judge Nelson will share some unique insights in our nation's judiciary. We invite you to join us next week right here on Facebook with the online luncheon or on YouTube. Thank you so much again for joining us today.